I'm happy that he was willing to look past whatever biases he had to still be supportive in that way. So my name is Leela, and I think I'm gonna share a little bit about my experience being a first generation South Asian immigrant, child of people who have immigrated from India, and about how that kind of interacts with my queer identity and being a Hindu. In general, the South Asian community is not really educated on what it means to be queer, and what it means to be LGBTQ. So a lot of times when I try to integrate myself into that community, whether it's at Vanderbilt or back home or with my family, I'm starting at a place where other people don't really understand, or if they do, have a preconceived notion of what that means or biases about what that means. In general, when my experience coming out to friends who are the same age as me and have kind of grown up in this country has been a lot better than sharing my story with my family and other people who were maybe born in India or lived most of their life in India and don't completely understand what it means to be queer. Over here, I came out to my friends, and they were very supportive, but their first question was always like, do your parents know? How do they feel about that? My parents would never be okay with that. Things like that. That initially made me kind of scared to tell my parents, just because in general, like, the South Asian community isn't great with being open-minded, or just like not immediately writing someone off because they're different. When I decided to finally come out to my mom in my senior year of high school, I was very scared, and it felt like I had kind of been keeping the secret from her. And I'm very close to my mom, so I didn't want to change that relationship at all. I don't know, that she was someone who really meant a lot to me. Like, I wanted her to be in tune with who I was and have an idea of my whole identity. So when I finally gathered up the courage to come out to her, I was very, very scared. But she was, as she has always been, very supportive. She was like, oh, really? Like, what's that? But I think as I started to share my experience more with her, and as she slowly became more educated on what it meant to be LGBTQ, she realized that she could support me. And even though maybe the community as a whole is not totally on board with being open to queer people, she felt like, as a parent, it was her role to be supportive of me, and I'm really grateful for that. On the flip side, well, actually, not really the flip side. My dad is great, but my experience coming out to him was a little bit different, just because in the past, when I was growing up, he made a lot of homophobic comments, and it was clear to me that he had an existing bias against people who were part of that community. And I waited longer to come out to him, just because I thought there was a greater chance that he would be angry with me, or be not supportive of me, want to cut me off. Like, all of these things went through my head. But about a year after I came out to my mom, and she had been pushing me, like, oh, you should tell your dad, I ended up coming out to him as well. And I think he definitely had a bias, but he kind of took a little bit to kind of reconcile that, and I could see like kind of the gears turning in his head, like, oh, this is wrong, but it's my daughter, so I have to show her that I'm not going to change the relationship that I have with her. He's not as woke per se. Like he has a little bit of trouble kind of getting that I can be a like good South Asian Hindu girl and still be queer. But he called me up a couple days later and said, "I don't know why you were so scared to tell me. I still love you." And that was like, I started crying. I was like, "Oh my God, this is such a big weight off of my chest." Yeah, I had a, I guess I can also talk about my grandma, who is coming from a different generation, lived in India for most of her life. So she was, I think, more along the lines of what people would expect. Her first reaction was, like, your parents taught you this because they're too liberal, and this is wrong. And then she went and talked to my mom and said, you taught her this, and you need to tell her that she has to toe the line and can't do this. And that was really disheartening because I've been close to my grandmother for most of my life. This is like the place that most of the South Asian community is coming from. I think coming to America has made a difference for people who immigrated earlier in their life. My story is unique in that, like, not every Asian or South Asian kid coming out to their parents has like a good experience, and a lot of people just don't. And I think it's worth it to kind of slowly educate our community on what it means to be queer. South Asian people who have lived in that region for most of their life haven't, whether through media or personal experience, exposed to the queer community, and therefore they have the immediate reaction like, this is wrong. Growing up here has been really good for me, in finding people that are supportive, and kind of figuring out that I didn't have to change any part of myself to find a community and to feel a sense of belonging.